Over the past 40 years, murders of Indigenous people have been steadily increasing.
Reporter Alexia Stanbridge joins us at the desk to tell us more on Arizona's effort to combat the violence.
Native women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than the national average in some U.S. counties with larger Indigenous communities. Arizona has implemented a task force to help. Solutions to problems plaguing Indigenous communities are often rooted in their culture. In Washington state, a meeting of a missing and murdered Indigenous women and people task force sometimes begins with traditional prayer and music. For generations, Indigenous people have suffered the loss of missing and murdered loved ones, an issue that has many complications.
You have multiple jurisdictions who have authority to act on crime on tribal lands, the federal government, the state government sometimes, tribal courts and tribal police.
Captain Paul Etnier with the Arizona Department of Public Safety grew up on Hopi Nation. He says it wasn't uncommon to not know where someone is.
There was also that reluctance of family members because they felt that that person was going to come back.
At the beginning of March, Governor Hobbs signed an executive order establishing a missing and murdered Indigenous people task force in an effort to make some progress in solving this issue. The task force is a collaboration with state, federal, and tribal governments to gather information and work with law enforcement on solutions.
This task force is to get everybody together to start talking about what steps do we take concretely now moving forward.
Arizona has one of the highest numbers of missing and murdered Indigenous women cases, and Tucson is the city with the 4th highest number of cases in the country, according to the Urban Indian Health Institute.
It is kind of disheartening if you look at it, just the injustice within Indian country, you know, the inequities of justice being applied.
Arizona is not the first to implement a task force. Other states like Washington and Wisconsin have as well. Annie Forsman-Adams is a policy analyst for the Washington State Attorney General's office. She says their task force began meetings over a year ago and has found some success. One example is the creation of the first missing Indigenous persons alert system in the nation.
That alert system has been activated dozens of times now. I think we've had close to 40 reports. And we have found people. We have found people that may not have been found.
Anna Bean, a Puyallup Tribal Council member, said the Washington State Task Force has made slow but good progress.
I feel deeply affected by this. These are our relatives. I know somebody who's been affected. And so for them, I carry this work so that they don't have to carry it alone.
However, one big issue facing all of the task forces is the lack of accurate data, said Etnier, who is on the Arizona MMIP task force.
There's not a lot of data that's out there. So do we truly know the whole scope? I don't believe so.
But Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, who is also on the Arizona task force, is optimistic.
I think we have to see progress. I mean, we can't allow this to continue this way.
And everyone agrees that any solutions must be rooted in Indigenous culture and history, with their voices being heard. The task force will be made up of members from law enforcement, tribal nations, and victims advocacy agencies. Their first report with recommendations for actions is due December 1st, 2023. When I spoke with representatives from Washington State, they recommended that Arizona make sure to include families and survivors as much as possible into the work.
Thank you, Alexia.